Castlevania: Portrait of Ruin. Originally released in the holiday season of 2006 for the Nintendo DS. It has finally been re-released in the Castlevania Dominus Collection, retailing for $24.99 and available on all modern platforms. Castlevania: Portrait of Ruin is a metroidvania, and as with virtually all Castlevania titles, you're trying to stop the resurrection of Dracula. However, this time there is a different vampire, going by Bronner, and he's apparently based off a real-life French artist. He's here with two female vampires that he claims are his daughters. I find it a little strange how his sprite looks something like Count Orlok from Nosferatu, but then his portrait for speaking does not look like that at all. And to go along with him being based on an artist, he has somehow sealed away Dracula's power with various paintings. And just like Mario 64, you're going to have to go into those paintings to take care of business. Gameplay-wise, Castlevania: Portrait of Ruin does set itself apart from other Metroidvanias in a number of ways. Firstly, you have two characters, Jonathan Morris and Charlotte Ullen. You can switch freely between these two characters, or have both on screen at once, with one of them being AI controlled. Jonathan being your more typical Castlevania protagonist, with your standard array of weapons and sub-weapons, whereas Charlotte is a magic user, having far less gear to use, and spells that take a little too long to cast for the most part. But she can be useful if you have her cast the spell, and then use Jonathan to be a distraction so she doesn't get attacked. If you choose to use both characters at once, the character you're controlling has hit points, where the character controlled by AI will use the magic bar as their hit points. Early on in the game, having these two protagonists is actually used quite a bit, where you have to use both characters to solve puzzles. And you get abilities, such as being able to jump off your partner's shoulders. But later in the game, these kind of puzzles and abilities fall by the wayside. Like when you find a more traditional double jump that means you'll never spring off your partner's shoulders again. But outside of your partner gimmick, you also have a series of tasks that are fully optional but rewarding to do. In Dracula's castle, you find a ghost. He's from Castlevania Bloodlines, and as you explore Dracula's castle and find the various paintings you need to go into, he will give you tasks to perform. They take many different forms. Defeat X number of this enemy, bring me these items, find this location, master this ability. While these are all optional, they are very worthwhile to perform due to their rewards. But there are times when you will get one of these tasks assigned to you, and you can't actually complete it at the current point in the game. And this can lead you to spend a lot of time going over the same areas again and again, without actually accomplishing anything. And some of these tasks can be a real grind, like when you need to master a skill that maybe you've never used before, or when you need a specific drop that only drops off of one enemy. You may also notice as you play that Dracula's castle seems unusually small this time around. That is because you have to go inside these paintings that are all worlds onto themselves. And these actually give the game a lot of visual variety, as you'll find yourself going through a European city, desert ruins, a circus where the enemies can walk on the walls and ceilings at times, and what seems to be an abandoned college. These make the areas stand out from one another quite a bit more than they do in the standard Castlevania. And later in the game, you get to go through alternate versions of these areas that are far harder. This was the second Castlevania to come to the Nintendo DS, and it set itself apart from its predecessor by having almost no touchscreen interaction, at least in the base game. It also often feels much easier, as you're generally much more overpowered, particularly if you're doing all of the optional tasks. And the fact that you don't have to draw any seals certainly helps too. But in addition to the base game, there were also 4 other modes that could be unlocked. a boss rush mode, which I think speaks for itself, a prequel story, Sisters mode, where you play as the vampire sisters from the base game. And this mode did heavily use the touchscreen of the DS, and while in the modern collection you can play it using the right analog stick, it was clearly meant for a touchscreen and is a little awkward to play in the modern collection. Still, if you're looking to get the complete story, this is certainly worth playing at least once. But coming to terms with using the right stick for attacking will certainly take some time and patience. There is also Richter mode. This allows you to play as Richter Belmont and Maria. He has his whip and array of sub-weapons, she has a handful of spells, and they start off with basically all of the mobility power-ups, so you can freely explore the castle and do things out of order if you're so inclined. Lastly, there's Old Axe Armor mode. This is a mode you play if you truly hate yourself. But in all seriousness, this is the hardest mode, and, play it if you're looking for a challenge. So is Castlevania Portrait of Ruin worth your time and money? Well, absolutely yes, especially in the modern collection, as back in the day, this game retailed for $40 by itself, and now you can get it for $25, and it comes with the other two DS Castlevania games. And aside from being an excellent Metroidvania, and arguably the best Castlevania on the DS, this game actually has a lot of interesting lore for people that are longtime fans of the Castlevania series, as you're dealing with the ghost of a character from Castlevania Bloodlines, and one of our protagonists, Jonathan, is actually a descendant of the other character from Castlevania Bloodlines. And while not everyone playing is going to actually be interested in the wider lore of the Castlevania series, it's good to know that it's here if you're interested. There's also a lot of meat here just in terms of gameplay, considering you have the base game, Julius mode, Sisters mode, and Old Axe Armor mode. And Sisters mode in particular is interesting because it is a prequel to the base game story, and serves to flesh out many details that are just sort of hinted at in the base game. You also have an option to do a New Game Plus, although this is already one of the easier Castlevanias you can play, so a New Game Plus mode is not overly enticing. Still, if you're only inclined to play one Castlevania on the Nintendo DS, I do think Portrait of Ruin is the one to play. So yes, I clearly and absolutely recommend Castlevania Portrait of Ruin. And it is best if played in the Castlevania Dominus collection, as finding DS carts at this point is a little difficult. And the Dominus collection is available on all modern platforms. Please do subscribe, comment, like, and tell your friends.